Welcome back, everybody, to Rock Resurgence Radio. We are excited to be back, man. Season 1 was fun, and we're on to Season 2. I know you already had one episode, but this one's going to be special. I'm your host, Chad.
And I'm your co-host, Bergie.
Anyways, we're going to get... We talked a little bit in our teaser about trying to get a special guest, and we do happen to have one. Thank God.
Really good one.
Yeah, really good one. You guys are going to be super pumped about this. I've sent out emails and text and Facebook messages and Instagram messages and finally got a reply from one. I've got a reply from a few, I should say. But this one actually pulled the trigger, said he would come on, and we couldn't be happier. I'm going to let Chris tell you who our special guest is going to be.
Yeah, so we promised, and there may be more to come. We'll see how it goes. Tonight, we have our first very, very special guest. Not that hair metal guru, Brian from Hairband Basement, all those guys aren't very special guests, but somebody that you might all know. We talked about some of their music on some of our episodes from Season 1, but we have a gentleman named Anthony Corder. He's the lead singer for Tora Tora. 2 awesome albums in the early 90s, late 80s, actually 89. Surprise Attack came out 92. One of my favorite albums ever is Wild America. And then they got some new stuff out too, and we're going to talk with him about that tonight. We're going to interview him, and you guys are going to see it here in all its glory.
It is going to be so damn fun because, we're excited like little kids because we get to talk to somebody. It's like meeting a star. It's like meeting your idol, your heroes, because we've been listening to this music for a long time, and that's kind of why we started this whole thing. We didn't really intend on doing these. We thought maybe it would come down the road after we get a little better and a little bigger and stuff like that. But Anthony was so kind to grant us an interview early on with little to no subscribers. Not saying that we don't have you guys, we do appreciate you guys very much, but we were a little surprised, and we did a little dance, and we're very, very excited. So with that, I guess there's got a whole lot we're going to ask him, all the questions you'd think we'd ask him, and probably more, because we were just giddy. We shared a note on through Apple, and we were always adding in different questions and stuff like that. So we are delighted. So I hope you guys enjoy this too, and we're going to try keep this up. We're going to contact some more people. There's a one out there that said, let me think about it. There's another one that wants a couple of references and a link to our podcast, and we're going to send that out. And then hopefully we get some more for you too, because this is really exciting.
Yeah, and we'll continue some of the good stuff that I hope you already like. We're adding in a couple of different features. I guess we talked about this in the preview. So without further ado, is that how you say that?
Further ado.
Anyway, here's our interview with Anthony Corder.
Enjoy.
Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Sound great.
Sound fantastic.
How y'all doing tonight?
We're doing great.
Yeah, doing excellent. Doing excellent. So,
well, thanks for inviting me on to talk to you for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. It's our pleasure, believe me.
It's a great honor to have you on. Like, we both love your stuff, and this is the kind of stuff we talk about on our little podcast. Just started it.
That's kick-ass, man. That's awesome. I'm glad you're doing something.
We're so excited to have you.
I know.
Oh, man, me too. I can't thank y'all enough for giving me a platform to talk to people, man. We appreciate guys like you giving us access to an audience, man, and getting to tell our story and reach people, and that's what it's all about.
Right. I love it. That's the best attitude. I'm reaching out to other people too as well, and you were the first one that just were like open arms at, hey, yeah, thanks for thinking of us. Everybody else is kind of a little standoffish. You got to kind of break that ice and whatever. And
yeah,
let's do it. And I'm like, Jesus, I can't believe it.
Yeah, we've been excited about this for a while.
Yeah, kind of giddy like little schoolgirls there.
It's crazy, man. Technology and everything the business has changed so much, since we started. And I know a lot of people y'all are reaching out to. It's just are distracted,
Yeah,
life and trying to keep up with all this stuff and um,
it is.
stay in front of the audience. And I mean, doing just social media by itself is a freaking job in itself, man.
Yeah.
Y'all know, trying to keep up.
So you asked us how we're doing. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Man, I'm doing great. I'm excited. We got the 35th anniversary thing. We got a little surprise project we dropped out in Memphis, so we'll talk about that. And
Okay,
Perfect.
perfect.
everything's good. My children are they're like 23, 22, and 20.
So you
Three
got
boys.
3
So
boys?
they're all grown up, and so that's kind of how I'm out on the road promoting and doing everything right now. Is everybody's okay and self sufficient for a minute.
Good, good.
And I just looked at my wife and said, I think I'm having my midlife moment. Instead of getting a convertible, I want to go sing some songs and see some of the fans and stuff. So,
Well, we're excited about that.
yeah.
So, any of the kids following in your footsteps?
We never really pushed it around my house. They kind of just grew up around it. But my middle son is very musical. He plays keyboards, kind of taught himself on YouTube, and he's really talented. Like, I play just enough to make chords and write songs. My mom was a piano player and she played by ear, and I just kind of picked up a couple of things. But I mean, he is like, I literally started calling friends of mine that were like, touring musicians and stuff, and said, "Hey," I showed a couple of chords to him, and now he's like in there playing all kind of crazy stuff, and I'm excited. But he loves it, man. He does it every night. He'll sit down at the piano and play, and go through songs he's working on and stuff. And my younger son is he plays guitar and a little bit of musical background for him, but he's at a school right now that teaches audio engineering.
Mm.
He's done that. I think he wants to work on equipment, like old vintage kind of stuff. He was in a avionics course that was out of town, and he was kind of dealing with. He wanted to work on computers on airplanes, and then he kind of fell into this other thing while he was on a break. And
Okay.
we just said, "Hey, man, we want you to be happy, do something that you like." I didn't have any idea he would be drawn to that, but he seems to be having a great time. They did a project. I went in and got to sing on it, like one of his projects in school.
That's cool.
And they did a Ann Peoples "I Can't Stand the Rain." Yeah, it was kind of like the humble pie version, but they kind of did it like a come together Beatles vibe. It was really cool. It was his classmates were the musicians, and
That's awesome.
so anyway, that was kind of like a cool dad moment because I couldn't say anything because it was his session, but I was in there just going, these dudes are like rocking out. They're like,
That's cool.
Chad
having a
has
good
a little musical ability. Bergie does not. I'm just a fan and
time.
love to listen to it. So
Yeah.
Well, I will tell y'all this. I'm as crazy about it now as I think I feel it and everything a little bit more. I don't take it for granted now that I'm older. My
Right.
family was very musical. Like I said, my mom was a piano player, but she had 2 sisters and a brother. And we live way out in the boonies like you guys did. There's the place they live has like maybe a stoplight, and a Dollar General and a couple gas stations at the same intersection, and then nothing. And we're out in the sticks in the middle of Mississippi, and so they grew up out there in the country, and that's kind of how they entertain themselves. Is my mom played piano, and my uncle and aunts played guitar, and one of the sisters was just a singer. But they had like that family harmony thing going on.
Nice.
And I never sang around my family. They would always go, "Get in here!" They're jamming out, doing Ray Charles, or my aunt and uncle liked. They would do the Eagles and all kind of rock things, and gospel music, of course, was a really big thing. We were kind of grew up Southern Baptist, so we were at church all the time. And but I never sang around them, and I was just too embarrassed and intimidated and everything. So I got interested enough to get my aunt to kind of show me some chords on the guitar, and then I just kind of ran off and found my own group of people
That's
and
cool.
surprised them. I walked in one day and just went, "Hey, I'm singing with a band," and they were like, "You're what? You don't ever sing," But
Uh,
they think it's really funny now. But I think like all through the years, people have interviewed me and stuff, and they said, "Who's your biggest influence?" And growing up, it was all kind of different people, man. Everybody from Aerosmith, Van Halen, Janis Joplin, and of course Zeppelin was a huge influence. But as I got older, I kind of realized, I was like, man, I know it was my family, man, more than anything, because they just kind of ingrained it in me from as far back as I can remember. We've had music, people singing and playing in the house, and my grandfather, he loved music. He didn't play, but he loved it, and he would get the children to play. And he was really good friends with a guy named Mississippi John Hurt, that was a real famous blues musician down in the Delta. And I used to live across the pasture from where his little shotgun house was. I'd ride my motorcycle through his pasture and all that stuff. But my granddad said that he used to just go, and he would be sitting out there under a tree, and they would stop, and he would listen, and they'd smoke a cigarette, and my granddaddy was dancing around and stuff. So he loved that music and stuff. And my aunt and uncles learned that finger picking style. So to this day, they still do it. I don't know how they do it. I've watched them for my whole life, and I can't figure it out. But so I kind of look up to them as my influences. I just saw my aunt about 2 weeks ago and was telling her, I was like, we were still thinking about sitting on the back porch of my house, my fingers hurting. And I was like, God, I don't know if I can figure this out. And we were playing stuff like Journey. Y'all remember that Infinity record? Did y'all ever listen to Journey?
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That we did some songs on it, Winds of March and Patiently. I used to love that Patiently song. And but she was showing me all kind of, we listened to everything from, acoustic singer-songwriter stuff to, rocking out on some Skinner in Boston and all those kind of things, So
Yeah, one of the questions I had for you was kind of in this vein was, your music is really blues based, from what I can understand. And you kind of answered the question for me right there, that where it came from,
yeah,
what kind of bands you were listening to. And yeah, Aerosmith, their old stuff. Well, they're all blues based too, but yeah, so I get it. And yep, I'm with you. Finger picking, I can't do it.
it's kind of unique, style. There was a lady named Elizabeth Cotton. She kind of did it too. She played left-handed upside down guitar, I think, too, which was just blows my mind. But anyway, yeah, man, listening, I grew up to everything. Mostly I was at church a lot when I was a little kid, but then I think it was just through osmosis of growing up in the South. It was around us everywhere. And I was going to tell you this. I know this is kind of off subject, but when I was growing up, I actually have a connection to you guys in the Dakotas because I moved to South Dakota when I went into 7th grade. So I took a leap from Mississippi down in the Delta and came to South Dakota.
Wow.
That's cool.
And I went to Brookings, where South Dakota State is.
Yep.
My dad worked for the airlines for like 30-something years, but he was trying to work his way up the corporate ladder. He wasn't a pilot. He was on the company side. And so one of his moves right off the bat was we had to come up to South Dakota for him to kind of start making the moves he wanted to do. And it was incredible. I had never seen anything like South Dakota. It felt like 3,000 miles away from home, and drove our cars up there and came in. And it was the most beautiful summer, no humidity. Everything was green. I could ride my bike across the whole city. It was kind of like a little 10 square mile little plot of land in all the cornfields and everything. And so I could skateboard all over it. I could ride my bikes. And I loved it. And, all of a sudden the weather changed, and it started snowing. And man, we had never seen snow like this in our life. If we got a dusting, we were just dancing around outside and just thought it was amazing. Yep. So anyway, we were out in the front yard, like rolling around, like throwing each other around and diving in it and all kind of stuff, just freaking out, and we looked next door and people were boarding their windows up and stuff. And we said, what's going on? What are they doing? And all of a sudden we realized it's not going to stop snowing. It's just going to keep coming and coming and coming. I had never seen anything. It introduced me to all kind of stuff, riding snowmobiles and all. I'd never done any of that stuff. But I think we moved from there. We were going to Houston, Texas, and my dad got another opportunity to move again for his, professional career. His profile would get bumped up. He was going to Houston, Texas, and the day we moved, it was 8 below zero, and we were in a U-Haul pulling out of South Dakota.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was just the greatest time. I loved that. I saw some guys at Monsters on the Mountain, or excuse me, the Mountain Music Festival is what they call it now, in Gatlinburg. I just played there like a week or so ago, and there was a whole group of people from Montana. And I, stopped in the hallway. I was saying hey to them or whatever, and they told me they were from there. And I just said, man, that's some of the greatest memories of my life, man. I mean, not only, it's kind of a transition anyway as a kid. You're kind of going into middle school and all that, but just being there and being around that place, it was so beautiful, man. I mean, it's just imprinted in my mind how gorgeous that place was. So I'm really connected up there. I haven't been back in forever. I haven't been up there since I moved off, but we still talk about it all the time. My family and I laugh about it. And I think we just had like really crazy stories. When we went there, we walked into the grocery store and we go, hey, y'all got some cornmeal in here? And like the whole store stopped and like turned around and started looking at us. And we were like, what's going on, man? And they were like, why are these people talking like this? I mean, we sounded like we were from another planet, And, but it was so fun. We just loved it. I started playing music up there. I played trumpet. A friend of mine, I made a friend with a guy, and he was playing he had one of those silver Bach trumpets, man. He had kind of been playing for a minute, and we were riding bikes around, and he said, yeah, I'm getting ready for band practice. And I was like, oh, I should probably try to figure that out. And he mentioned the trumpet, and I said, well, maybe I'll go get one and try to figure it out. And I didn't get the cool silver one. I got like a gold, it's a Holton or something like that. But that kind of introduced me to reading music, and kind of getting ideas about scales and all that kind of stuff. And so that was kind of a cool thing. But anyway, it was crazy. But yeah, we had, music around our house all the time. So we were always playing or singing or doing something. So I think my biggest probably influence from the rock side was my aunt that I was talking about that showed me the guitar and stuff. She loved Kiss. She was about 10 years older than me. So like when that bicentennial time came along and the poster, they had the headband on, the blood on it. And she had that poster on her wall. I remember that vividly. And I remember hearing her play God of Thunder when I was a little kid. And it scared me to death. It sounds like demons or something at the beginning. As we get older and stuff, you realize it was a bunch of kids running around the studio and they just turned the mics on. But when I was 6 years old or something, I was like, oh my God, I ran out of the room and then I was like, what is that? I got to, go back in there and what's she listening to? And then the song came on. I was like, wow, this is crazy. What is this? And then I heard Shout It Out Loud and, freaking Detroit Rock City and all that. And I had the next thing, I had my tennis racket in my hand and I was on the bed and I freaking thought I was, in Kiss, man. I think it happened to a whole generation of people. It was just once Kiss Alive 1 came out, I mean, it blew our minds. And, you backtracked into all the original records and Hotter Than Hell and Dressed to Kill and all that. And I think they were my biggest influence at the beginning. Before that, I was listening to a bunch of pop music and AM radio and all that stuff. And then when Kiss came along, I got into them for a while, probably up until about, I don't know, Love Gun or Dynasty, somewhere right around in there. And but they definitely influenced me, the rock thing. That was kind of got my attention. And then, I started falling into other stuff, into Van Halen, and I found Led Zeppelin and just totally got my mind blown by that, all the blues stuff, and Robert singing and Janis Joplin. They were big influences on me. But I think it's, you kind of go through cycles. It kind of depends on your mood and the atmosphere you're in and all that. Your influences kind of shift, or at least mine have through the years. And, you're influenced by everybody. I mean, I went through a phase of, I loved Etta James, really got all into that and fell way back into the blues, into Elmore James, Sonny Boy Williamson, and started collecting all this Super 8 blues classic things at truck stops and all that kind of stuff, But I just love it, man. I love music. I'm a fan, still. I still see people and hear people, and I just go, wow. I go, I have for real appreciation for what they're doing. And I listen to all kind of different styles. But I think one of my favorite guys right now is that guy from Rival Sons. Jay Buchanan. I love that freaking band, and he is so good on stage, man. He's got control of his voice. He can really sing. I'm not kidding.
So you mentioned Van Halen. Is that where the Tora Tora name came from the song? From
Yeah, it was the intro on Women and Children First, which is a girl that I went to high school with made a list of names. When I met Keith and them, kind of the story of Tora is we are the same four original guys from the very beginning. The guitar player and drummer, Keith and John, went to one high school, and Patrick, the bass player, and I went to another high school in Memphis. And Keith and John and Patrick had all known each other for a long time. Keith and Patrick, our bass player and guitar player, have known each other since they were probably 8 or 9 years old. They rode bikes together and did all kind of stuff, and so they've known each other forever. And so anyway, I was kind of playing in a little neighborhood band that had entered like a talent competition or something, and Patrick and them heard about it or saw it or something, and he literally came up to me back when people used to hang out at the mall. He came up, he found me one day. I was walking around there, and he said, "Hey, we're auditioning some people to sing, and he said, would you want to come try out?" And I was a nervous wreck, of course. I just freaked out. They were a couple of years older than me, and I thought they were super established already. They had done some recording at some high school studio somewhere, Kingsbury or something like that in Memphis. And they had played somewhere downtown, like in Midtown, at some Madison house or some place that didn't have a door and a window in it. It just had a stage set up where people could play and stuff. But I didn't know all that at the time. I heard all those stories later. But they were gigging and they had done some stuff. So, and I had a little acoustic guitar, a Viking. I've got it in the background here. The headstock's knocked off of it right now, but hopefully it's a family heirloom kind of thing. I'm going to have it fixed. But I had that, and I had worked up some songs, and I was like, well, I'm just going to go over there and do my singer-songwriter thing. I'm going to sing like the Eagles' Desperado or something that might show my voice off or something. Yeah. And I went over to Patrick Francis, is our bass player. I went to his house. They were set up in his living room, and his parents weren't there. They were somewhere else. And I walked in, and Keith had 2 amps set up one on each side of the room. Patrick had a bass amp in his bass rig, and then John had a set of drums. He had rototoms, like he thought he was like Neil Peart or something. He had like a huge set of drums set up in there. And I walked in and went, oh man, these guys are serious. They got a PA stuff set up in the house and everything. And anyway, I sat down and started trying to do I was so scared I couldn't even breathe or talk. And I tried to sing Desperado, and I got about, I don't know, a verse into that song. And they went, man, that's awesome. But do you know any Aerosmith, Toys and Attic? Or do you know 2112 by Rush? Or do you know Can't Get Enough of Your Love by Bad Company? Or I Want You to Want Me, Cheap Trick? Or Jukebox Hero, or no, Hot Blooded by Foreigner. I mean, they started just rattling off these songs, and I just went, oh my God. I said, I think I could figure it out if we sit in here and run through it some, But they had already kind of rehearsed a little bit. And I mean, the fact that they said 2112 by Rush, you don't even sing on that. Like that first side is like 3 songs of instrumental, which was funny. But they did the whole thing, They were sitting there and they were set up, and Keith did it, and I'll never forget it, man. His amps like did the like they echoed, and I just went, oh my God, this is so cool. I mean, I was just having a heart attack,
Yeah.
And but anyway, we kind of started off that way, but there was something right away when we all got together that was just people talk about chemistry and stuff like that. There was just something that about the 4 of us hanging out. We got along, and they were giving me a lot of, rubbing me a little bit because I was younger, and I was kind of, intimidated a little bit at the beginning. But there was something there, and they said, we ought to play somewhere or do something or do the talent show at the high school or whatever this year. And so we worked up, working on ideas for songs and stuff like that. So it was crazy. And to think about now that we've been together, for 30 something years, 35 since the record, so maybe about 37 years or something that we've been jamming. It's pretty crazy, and we've never had any really super bad falling out. I mean, we're kind of like family, so we have our moments where we get on each other's nerves or get cross with each other for a minute, but we really love each other. You know, we've kind of always picked up where we left off. We've had some times where we've all kind of split off to do our own things with our families and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of taking a break. But you know, I have one sister. She's younger than me. She's 6 years younger than me, but they're the closest thing to brothers that I've had my whole life. You know, we've been really high on the mountain together where we were just partying and celebrating, and we've been through some pretty scary, you know, dark moments of life together. So we just love it. We still genuinely enjoy hanging out with each other, and we're still telling the same stupid jokes from when we were little kids.
And from that day, it was Tora Tora.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry y'all were asking about the name. There was a girl we went to high school with, and we got together. Her name was Kelly Coffee, and she sat behind me in class, and we were real good friends. We partied together, and you know, went did all this kind of stuff with each other. And she just came into school, and she had a list of names. It was like, I don't know, 10 or 15 names on there. And we were just kind of going through, and we started talking about Tora Tora, and we said, man, that's kind of cool, man. That's off that Van Halen record. And you know, we said maybe we should try it. And the first show that we did where we played out, where there was an audience, we kind of had a built-in audience because we went to two different high schools. So we had those two peer groups of friends that would come out and show up at a show. So right away, we kind of had a following, and but they were all there, and they started doing the chant that was kind of like out of Animal House, but instead of toga, they were saying Tora. They were going Tora. Tora. We could hear them, you know. We went, oh my God, they're chanting it, and it's like catching on, and people are saying it. And so we said, well, man, maybe that'll work. Maybe we'll just stick with that. We weren't even sure. I think at the beginning, it's a kind of an old joke with a bunch of bands. I think Kansas or somebody else had said they had done something like it, but where you say, hey, why don't we call it free beer? And people will show up just because they want to come and have a drink or something. But the Tora thing just kind of stuck with us. And, you know, we caught a little bit of flack after the fact, once the band was out and stuff, about people were asking us about promoting war and, you know, questions like that. But we never really had any kind of agenda like that. It was more, we kind of got it off Van Halen because we were huge fans of theirs. And we were more about just celebrating and having a good time. We weren't out trying to make some kind of big statement or political meaning behind our name or something. And, you know, some veterans have even said things to us that said, you know, wow, man, you're promoting the bombing of Pearl Harbor or something. But we were like, no, we weren't really doing that. We did the nose art tie-in because the art department at A&M had the idea for those B-52 bombers and putting the girl on the side. And that ended up being one of the best promotions for our record that we could have ever come up with. I mean, we used to go on the radio and say, hey, if you look like the girl on our record, we want you to come down to the thing, you know. So we were looking for her all over the country. And every time we said that, all the dudes would show up and say, I don't want to say who this girl is. So we would end up having, you know, our little club gigs and stuff would be packed out with people looking for the lady on the album cover. So it served us well. But we've always been about just people being united and inclusive and all that kind of stuff. We when we were bringing that group of people together, those different high schools, y'all remember how you were, your chest was kind of puffed out and stuff when you're in high school, you're kind of cocky, and you know, that people would get together and they'd end up getting in arguments, you know, and they'd get in fights and stuff. And we were like, man, we don't want that kind of stuff going on around here. We're all trying to have a good time. I think that's kind of carried with us through the years, is we've always felt like that, is we wanted everybody to be there and be a part of what was going on and have a good time. So
and that's why you're all together.
Yeah.
Made changes in the lineup. It's
that's
the same
unusual.
four guys.
You know, that's unusual. And, you know, typically there's some breakups or something, or somebody did this or whatever. So, you know, kudos to you guys for keeping it together all these years.
Yeah, I think the biggest one for us was when the record deal went away. I was probably 24 when we had been running for about 6 years on the road. The first record, I was, I don't know, 17 or 18 when we started recording.
Wow.
And I think we worked on that record maybe for a year or so. I might have been, maybe I was 19 by then, by that point. Um, we had done a production deal first, and then we went into shopping. Excuse me. We did a production deal with Ardent Studios. So, for any of your listeners or viewers out there, you should look up Ardent Studios in Memphis. That's a real famous um, studio that has a long history. They were tied into Stax music and all that kind of stuff. And so we did our production deal with Ardent, and that first record, I know I wasn't old enough to get into bars when I was out promoting it, because at some of the places I went, they'd let me come in and do sound check, and then I'd have to leave. They'd say he's got to go.
That's crazy.
While the other people are coming in.
That's great. Yeah, I was going to mention the whole free beer thing. I didn't know, because I was on Wiki, and I thought that's pretty original. That's pretty funny.
It was pretty fun. I don't think we were the first people to do that, but it came around in our group of people. We didn't know anybody had ever done it, and we weren't trying to take away from somebody's other story. We did it because we figured if we said we had beer at the party, people would come out. We had kind of a partying group of people that launched us out of Memphis, and the first gig that we played was at a little place called College Inn over near the University of Memphis, and they gave us a keg to play. We were, the other guys were a little bit older than me. I was little, and we went to practice the night before and drank, like half of it the night before we were supposed to play. I think, but we had a lot of fun. I mean, it was just, I don't think ever took it for granted. We just said, man, this could end at any minute. Let's just go have a good time together and, kind of ride the lightning kind of thing. And we didn't miss much. I think we were kind of in the middle of everything there for a little while.
Yeah, so you mentioned the Dakotas, South Dakota specifically. You said you hadn't been back, which I had a question about. I've not seen you guys live, and it makes me a little sad. Have you ever played up in this neighborhood?
No? We did. We came through Fargo, and we played a couple places, not close enough to get to. I mean, the closest I've been now probably is over in Hinckley, Minnesota, that rock timber thing. Yep. We came up that way. So we could have probably routed something that way, but that was just a one-off. I think we flew in there and then we were going somewhere else. So, but Fargo was a long time ago. That was, I can't remember if we might have been on the road with Warrant or in Lynch Mob or something like that. It was a big tour. We were one of the opening bands, and we went through, but that was probably 25 years ago, or longer. So
wouldn't surprise me if it was Warrant, just because they played up here a lot.
It might have been them then. We were on that Dog Eat Dog tour for, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks. I think we went out with them.
Okay. It
was us and Lynch Mob, because I remember we got to hear George Lynch warm up every night, which was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. I'm a guitar player too, not that great, but I dabble in it, and he's one of my favorites. Those off notes that he plays, those I don't even know what they're called, eighth notes or whatever.
Yeah.
Just his style of playing, was it just amazing to see live?
It was. It still is. I just played with him. He's doing Rise of the Decades. It's him and Terry Illis from XYZ and Great White, and the band AON, that their front man sings for Great White now. He's a little young guy in his 20s. Brett's his name. He's an amazing singer. That guy, he could sing anything. I mean, his voice was so high. I mean, he could be doing like Rush songs and all that kind of stuff. Crazy range. And then I think there was a Rolling Stones tribute called the Music City Stones. They're out of Nashville. They're awesome. And there was another one. I can't think of the other band. There was another original rock band, but I got to watch George that night. He's still incredible, man.
Yeah.
And back in the day, we used to be in those kind of sports arena kind of play, where they basketball, college basketball or something is played. He would go in the shower area and put his amp for the reverb, it was kind of in there, kind of bouncing around. And he would just sit there and just play, just do scales and play solos and songs, and we would just be in that dressing room going, "Oh my God, it's freaking George Lynch is sitting in the room next to us,"
Yeah.
as kids and everything. I mean, we were huge. I was Dokken fans, Alone Again and that whole Breaking the Chains, all that era of them, and um, that was just it was crazy. When I very first started singing, um, I had a friend of mine that lived in my neighborhood named Michael McDonald. He's the whole reason I ever started singing. I used to go to his house all the time. He was a freaking shredder on the guitar. He was one of those dudes that just locked himself in a room and he would learn the solos on the records like Rat and Doc and all that stuff. And he talked his mom into buying him a Charvel guitar, which it was pink. I'll never forget it. He just wanted it and wanted it. And then it just showed up one day. And that dude could tear the strings up. Well, we were at his house and he had a set of drums. But it was like a partial set. It was like a snare and a hi-hat and a bass drum and maybe a cymbal. And I would sit there and keep a beat with him, and he was playing and doing solos and stuff. And he was like, "Man, we need somebody to sing." And I said, "Well, I'll just yell or something over the drums. And then the next thing we knew, I had like a cone out and I was like yelling over his guitar and stuff. And then, all of a sudden the next thing he was like, "Man, you got to sing on these songs. Let's work out where you learn the lyrics and, figure out the arrangement and all that kind of stuff." And so I'm really indebted to him. We're still friends. I still see him at my shows. I think he built a studio in his house. Eventually, he played in a bunch of bands in Memphis, and he does film and TV kind of music now. So he's doing that still. But but he was definitely one of those George Lynch kind of real flashy. He could just tear the strings off the neck, so you're really inspired and stuff being around him.
So speaking of that, those kind of bands, Dokken and with George Lynch, I had a question about, I wouldn't really necessarily consider Tora Tora hair metal, but she definitely resonated with fans of that genre like me. Just curious what your take is on that term, because we get comments on our page about, oh, that's a derogatory term, or we kind of, I don't know that I heard it back in the late 80s or early 90s or where that term came from, but I don't consider it a derogatory term. How do you feel about that?
I think it was a lot of labels back then. Like there was a lot of things like glam rock and, all those we weren't really sure where we fit in all of that. We never moved out to LA. We actually stayed based out of Memphis our whole career. Part of it was because we did a production deal with the studio. And we said, "Hey, we want to record here," and we kind of made a deal with them. We would do our projects there, and we would only go out to LA to do, record label things. We were with A&M that was based out there, or do tours, promotional activities and stuff. And but we definitely felt that wave of the hair metal stuff that came through Memphis. Beale Street, there was, Beale Street is kind of the touristy street in Memphis. It's got tons of bars all over, and it's killer blues musicians everywhere. And they do, touristy sets. So there's, very similar kind of music all the time that's in those. And then there's standout people that are doing their own kind of music and all that kind of stuff. But one end of the street of Beale Street turned into like the rock mecca. And it was a place called the New Daisy on Beale Street. It was about an 800 or 900 seat venue. That allowed people to do original music. And there was a guy that ran the building. He managed it, named Mike Glenn. We're super indebted to him. He started doing a Tuesday night jam where the radio station sponsored it, and the local music store would put the back line in, and you could go in and you could play 3 songs or 15 minutes, and then they just, would pull you off stage or unplug you or something. And because of where Memphis is positioned, if we're looking at the state, we're kind of over in the kind of southwest corner of the state. When that radio station was broadcasting, it went out over Arkansas, the Boot Hill, Missouri, down into Mississippi, Alabama, and then all around Tennessee. So when that guy was talking about stuff on the radio, all those people were hearing it. So all these kids would show up. It was an all ages show, and the building would just be full of teenagers, man. I'm not kidding. 800 of them just crammed in there. And bands were vying for slots in there. You just go, man, if you get in that, you're getting in front of a bunch of people. I was scared to death. The first time we played something like that, I didn't even move. I like stared at my feet and sang. I couldn't even look at the audience. And we got done, and I walked in the dressing room, and Keith and everybody looked at me, and they go, "My God, you got to move around, man. You got to look at everybody or something." And I was like, "Man, I was so nervous. I just wanted to make sure I sang right." And they go, "You got to do both. You got to figure it out. I don't know what we got to do. We got to get you in front of people more often or something." I was so scared. I had terrible stage fright. I think I still do. And honestly, y'all, I think I'm kind of addicted to that feeling of just like, I'm scared to death. I don't even know what's fixing to happen or what even's going to come out of my mouth. And then I walk out there and I'm as surprised as everybody else. I go, "Oh God, okay, this is going to be cool. This is fun. I'm not freaking out anymore. This is going to be awesome." But I think you kind of get to where that's part of the routine. And I think I wouldn't feel that way if I just didn't care about what I was doing. But I start thinking about it. I kind of have a little routine that I do every gig or whatever, just to make sure I'm kind of in the right frame of mind. But the Bill Street thing was crazy, and that venue was amazing. And I don't know what you were asking before about the hair metal. I had all those people on my wall, man. I had Motley Crue on my wall. I had Bon Jovi on my wall. I was listening to all that music that was, on the radio all the time. I mean, we only had a couple of places to get all of our music. We could still discover music and go to music stores and funnel through vinyl and CDs and cassettes and all that stuff. But the most popular stuff that was on the radio was kind of what I was listening to, the bands that were breaking through and getting songs on. And I had their posters on my wall. And I think the labeling part of it probably hurt more. We weren't even really thinking about it. Like, we played shows with Alice in Chains,
Right.
in Spokane and Seattle and stuff when we were touring. And we just thought they were another rock band, like a heavy, they kind of sound like Black Sabbath or something. Right. And we weren't thinking, "Oh, this is grunge and it's fixing to crush, everybody's career." And all that. We didn't think anything like that. And I think it was the industry kind of had that label that was going around. But in 2020, in hindsight, from a business perspective of what was going on, they just found a new market of people, target market of people that just said, "Oh, wow, here's a whole group of people we're not even selling music to. Let's hit these people." But we definitely felt the shift, between our albums, man. The first one came out in '89, and really we were kind of on the tail end of all the hair metal, I guess what people are saying. We had followed all those bands. We were fans of some of those bands. Kix was one of my favorite bands we toured with. Those dudes kicked ass. I mean, they were on a roll. They already had a few records out, and by the time we got with them, "Don't Close Your Eyes" was on MTV, and they were just killing it. I mean, they were amazing. And but we felt this shift, man. We toured for about 2 years on that first record, and we came home and worked for a year. We were still traveling and doing shows, but majority of the time we were home and working on new music and kind of piecing it together. And in that period of time, the whole world shifted. By the time Wild America came out in '92, it was a whole different world than 1989. And so we definitely felt that. And there was a little bit of pressure maybe between the second record and the third record that we put together, because we kind of had a different perspective, and we were kind of seeing, hey man, this is a big shift that's happened. And it wasn't only just in the music industry in general. It was with us personally. Our A&R rep that assigned us to A&M had moved to a new company. That A&M sold the Polygram during our first record cycle. So we went from, the little indie. It wasn't little. They had everybody in the world, Sting and Janet Jackson, everybody. But they sold to another company. And so that shifted some of the personnel around, And in between all of our touring and recording and stuff, that was probably '93 when we were back working on new recordings. Our record rep, A&R person, Brian Huttenauer, got us together and said, "Hey, I've been offered a position. It's something I've worked for the whole time I've been in the music industry. I'm going to move." And we went, "Great, we're going with you." And he goes, "Well, you're under contract with A&M, so you still have to fulfill some stuff on your contract, so you're not going with me." And he said, "But I'm going to introduce you to another guy that's going to be your guy." So that was a big, adjustment on that third project, because nothing against the other guy. He just kind of inherited the project, but he wasn't genuinely invested like the other guy was, the initial person that signed you. And Brian, we loved him because we showcased, when we cut our demos and everything that we were shopping, we showcased for a bunch of record companies. There was kind of a bidding war going on. There were 6 labels. They came to see us at our rehearsal place. It was the Warehouse. And it was a place, my guitar player's dad had a glue business, and he had a warehouse in the middle of town where he stored some empty barrels, and we requested that we could do rehearsals there. And as soon as we walked in, we just go, we got to throw a party. This place is huge, And so we pushed all those glue barrels, or 55 gallon drums. We pushed them all to one end. We put plywood on top of them. And all of a sudden we just had a huge stage. It was like 100 feet wide, And we hung some black garbage bags off the front. We hung black garbage bags all over the wall. We put some carpet remnants underneath it, so it kind of deadened the sound in there. And all of a sudden we had a giant room to throw a concert in, man. And it was kind of underground. We didn't throw them all the time. We just throw it every once in a while. We were right next door to the giant Coliseum where we saw Van Halen, AC/DC, and all those crazy bands. So we're almost connected to that building. We were just over, and it was a long warehouse. It had a bunch of docks in it. And so if we threw a party, we would throw these crazy, the people, this is how nuts it got. The people on the radio, the DJs would go to the warehouse, Tora Tora. They're saying it, and it's broadcasting over all those states I was talking about. People were driving in from everywhere. We had little hand-drawn maps that we were passing out. We didn't have GPS and all that crap nowadays. And people would come up. They'd bring lawn chairs. They were eating pizza in the parking lot, throwing frisbees. We'd have the whole building packed full of people. When the party's over, we had to go out and clean the parking lot up because 18-wheelers would start pulling in about 5 o'clock in the morning. And we had a pickup, and we'd throw one of those 55-gallon drums in the back of the pickup and go and just get all the beer bottles up and pizzas and all that. And that record company guy, Brian Huttenhauer, was the only one out of that whole group of people that stayed. And he got in the back of the truck with us and was riding around while we were picking up after the party. And we just had a meeting, like a day or two later with the studio people. And they said, what did you think? You met everybody? How'd you feel? Da, 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 da. And we said, we like Brian. We said, we felt like he was really genuine and one of the only genuinely interested people. And we like him, and we think we want to talk to A&M. And so for 6 years, we were together, or 5 of them anyway. And he's amazing. And I've actually talked to him this year because of the 35th anniversary. I hadn't talked to him in a long time. I finally tracked him down, and just to say thank you to him for taking a chance on us. And, he was working with his way up in the corporate world, and he was kind of a junior A&R guy, but at the time, his 3 bands that had been signed with him, part of the project, was Extreme and Soundgarden, and we were the 3rd band.
Wow.
And so that's why people came calling on him. They said, hey, man, Extreme and Soundgarden's blowing up. We want you to come work for our company. You're hearing something or seeing something, and we want to, invest in that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so it was pretty awesome. And being a part of A&M was crazy because they had a lot of leverage. There was a lot of bands getting signed in the 80s, man. A physical product was out. You could recoup your money back off physical product. And they were charging freaking $19.98 a CD. It was raining champagne. People were making a lot of money, and the record budgets were big. The money was getting blown around. It was pretty decadent, times. And it was just, it was a different time, different than we are in now with streaming and all that kind of stuff. The industry was based on physical product and stuff back then. So it was a lot different. But because they had all the successful artists and stuff, they had in all kind of genres, Squeeze, and they had the pop Janet Jackson and Sting, but they had the whole history of rock stuff like the Humble Pie catalog and all the, killer rock bands. We didn't even realize it when we signed to them, how deep their catalog was of all the rock stuff. And so it's pretty crazy, but they had a lot of leverage. So that gave us opportunities like to get on MTV and things like that, where, in that day and time, there was only a couple of places you get access to music was on the radio and watching MTV,
Yep.
Right. We actually discussed that in one of our episodes. We're talking about, back when we were listening to music, there was work involved. You had to, we'd read hit paraders. We would go out, we'd have to go to well, we were from a small town, so we'd have to travel to a town that actually had a music store, um, go to the record store and buy it. And, there was work involved. Now everything's so easily accessible to, I mean, you get your phone and you got every possible band
Mm-hmm.
you'd ever want to listen to on a phone, and you plug it in your car, and then there it is. I mean, we had cassette decks that eat your tape, and you had to fix it with a pencil, and I
Yeah.
mean, it was back when we grew up. It was work.
Coming from those small towns, 300, 600, we drove to this town where we live now, and there was a
Yes.
great record store called Budget Music and Video.
Oh yeah.
They would pull a record off the shelf and play it for you before you bought it. So, hey, what's new in rock? And they would say, or we'd pick one out and say, hey, can we listen to this? And they'd play a little bit, and I want that. And we'd pick it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. So yeah,
Different
it was
time,
a
for
different
sure.
time for sure. Yeah.
Do you guys still collect vinyl?
I never did the vinyl thing. When I started, it was, cassette. Then I moved into CD, and then streaming basically.
Yeah.
I know vinyl is huge right now again, and I've thought about doing it, but then I started looking at the prices of albums and getting into it, and matter of fact, before we had one of our first episodes, I talked about this. At one point, I probably had 400 CDs or so, roughly, and I just wanted to get rid of the clutter.
Mm.
And I gave them all to a buddy of mine. Big mistake. After realizing that some of this music is not on Apple or Spotify or anything, now I have to go back out and buy these albums that aren't on there, and they're super expensive. I've paid as much as $50 for a CD, just have it in my catalog again.
Yeah.
So it was a big mistake. I wouldn't be doing that again. But
yeah, and I have very little vinyl, but I do have some. My daughter bought me a record player and a couple of vinyls. And every now and then, like for my birthday, she'll buy me one or two albums too. So I probably have a very small collection of about maybe a dozen or 2 dozen. So
yeah. I'm a brand ambassador for this company, Memphis Record Pressing. They press vinyl.
Okay.
Out of Memphis. They have a huge facility, man. It's incredible. Kids now, it feels like more of a collectible piece,
Yeah.
of music. Some of the artists they do their same album, they'll just do it different colors, different artwork. It's the same music and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty wild, and it's exciting that another group of another generation is kind of discovering that. And we gave our boys turntables one time for Christmas a few years ago, and they were the little ones you get at like Target or something. And we just had it in our room, but we were painting the kitchen or the dining room, rolling the walls. And I said, hey, somebody go, grab a record and put it on, while we're working, And they went over there and put a record on. They go, man, this record is awesome. And it was like Prince 1999. And I was like, dude, I was around when this came out the first time, and they listened to the whole, they were stuck, they were painting. So they listened to the whole side and then listened to the other side. And I think it's our attention spans nowadays. We're like, goldfish. We kind of stick around for a few seconds and then go, oh, I'm going to hop over to something else. And
right.
From a discovery aspect, having YouTube and Spotify and all those things are amazing. I mean, it's like you said, the whole history of recorded music's in your pocket. But it's a little overwhelming, a little bit trying to keep up. I think they said there's like 40,000 new songs a day going on Spotify. So, I mean,
that's insane.
Incredible. But the vinyl thing is funny. Like we still sell CDs at our shows, and I take vinyl on the road with me. And I ask people sometimes, I'm like, do you even have somewhere to play this? Like, I don't have a CD player. I mean, I have an external plug-in CD player somewhere in the house that hooks into my computer or something. But And they're like, no, I just really want to get it. I'm like collecting stuff. I want to get it. I want you to sign it, unpackage it and personalize it or whatever. To me, just for up and coming emerging artists, I think that the merch is so important, because their guarantees and stuff at the beginning of their career um, is not where they're going to make all their money. They haven't proven themselves with the audience and all that kind of stuff. So having that stuff on the road, a CD and vinyl and all that kind of stuff. If you have a piece of vinyl and you're going to unpackage it and personalize it, like thanks Cincinnati or wherever you are, we had a great time. I mean, you can really mark the price up.
Yep.
You got to have a way to be moving it. That's the one thing nobody wants. It's an upfront cost. All merch is, but if you're going out and playing shows, you can bank on that to say, hey man, at the end of the night, people are going to hit this merch table and we might make more money here than we did, for the gig. So that part of it kind of makes me encouraged for the younger generation that they're into that kind of stuff and collecting that stuff.
Is that kind of where bands make their money now? Because I understand, like from the streaming point, you'd get pennies for
portions of a penny, really.
Yeah.
There's a lot of royalties now to keep up with. There's all kind of from owning the master recording or being the songwriter, the person is the composer. The copyrights of those are where you make your money. That's intellectual property. That's your leverage and everything. And but yeah, I mean, a lot of it is touring is really expensive, man. I'm just being honest. I mean, people that are well established and have been on the road for 30 years, I mean, they got it down where they can project their earnings and everything and know how to kind of navigate it. When something like COVID came along and just decimated the whole touring industry, that was kind of scary.
Right.
But for the most part, you can kind of project, what your costs are going to be. And a lot of times the people that are going on tours and stuff, the first 2 or 3 shows or the first 10 shows or whatever, depending on what your production is and all that, that's what covers your tour. And then everything after a certain point is your bank money, where we say, okay, this is where we're going to start getting back in the black,
Right.
And so for bands like us, it's, touring it's a little bit complicated because some of us still have families, children and stuff in high school, and you have to weigh the travel and stuff. The playing part is never an issue. It's like I would do that anyway, and don't tell anybody, but I'd probably just show up and do it for nothing. But the part I'm getting paid for now is I have to take time to go to these places, and I'm getting away from my family, and it's the kind of the everything in between the playing part that you're really getting paid for. And that probably sounds a little jaded because I'm older. A lot of people are like, man, I don't even care. Put me in a car and take off. And I feel like that too, to some degree. I'm a little bit more flexible than my bandmates because they have some younger children. But from a business sense of it, just in general, you have to really kind of be strategic about how you're traveling and there's, there's 4 kind of main areas of where you're getting all your money from. The recordings, if you own those, the music publishing part, if you're the writer, the creator person that's on them, the touring part that you got going on, and then the licensing of the ownership of those compositions and that intellectual property. If you license that out for like a TV show or film or an advertisement or something that you're fired up about. So there's a lot of royalties now, though, with all the digital platforms, and you're going all over the world now, blasting out in the universe and everything. Those little pieces of that penny, it's not a lot, but if you get enough of those, if you start collecting them, then it starts kind of tallying up a little bit.
Yep.
So I'm excited, man, for the up and coming, emerging artists. I mean, they are so powerful. They're doing things that we dreamed about. I mean, they have the whole world at their fingertip. They can be their own business, direct to consumer, which is exciting. There's aspects of it, like y'all said, where they're not getting paid the way they should get paid, but legislation is catching up. It's taken them a long time. I think right at the beginning of streaming, the whole music industry freaked out because it was just something that it's like every new format that's come along, all the way from records to 8-track to cassette to CDs, to downloads. And then we said, okay, I'm not even downloading anymore. I'm just going to stream it on some site. We've always had some kind of learning curve, but in the middle of that streaming thing, the craziest thing in the world happened. The whole music industry turned on the consumer, and they said, you're stealing our music, and they started freaking everybody out. And and they had the right to say that there was ownership and copyrights and stuff going on, but it was just such a bizarre world. Like when I talk to kids and stuff now, I feel like I've lived in like two universes, because there was one where it was all physical and we were selling records and CDs and stuff, and then the streaming thing came along, and the whole landscape of the business changed. And then now we're really getting far out because of technology and stuff, AI and all those things that are going on. So, but the good of all that is we're all still learning. And I think that's why I still love the music industry so much, is it's always, you have to continually stay engaged with it and watch, and it keeps you, excited about what's going on. And I think, or I'm hopeful anyway, I don't know if it will happen, but I'm hopeful that the royalties and things will start catching up through legislation. They had the Music Modernization Act a few years back that's starting to help people get on the right track with helping with their royalty payments and stuff like that. And there's a flip side conversation that goes on this. And sorry, I didn't mean to get on some tangent about this, but
Okay, it's interesting.
a long time ago, when we had our little EP and our cassette or whatever, that was a one-time transaction when that person bought that cassette for $10 or $5 or whatever it was. And I gave it to them, and they could play it as many times as they want to, and I never participated in that again. The crazy thing about technology and stuff now is I can track that song every time somebody plays it, even though it's that little tiny piece of a penny. I know every time somebody's playing my song that I'm collecting that little piece of change.
Right.
And so that part of it is kind of cool. We just feel like it should be the creator person should be paid more. Like these big streaming companies and the record labels and all that they're making tons of money off something that just we dreamed up out of nowhere.
Right.
So I think that's where the rub is with everybody. And there's great things going on too with when I said AI before, I was an advocate that went and lobbied here in Tennessee for the Elvis Act, which is to protect people's voices from AI, to help. We know it's here. It's never going away. We're going to have to embrace it. It's just like streaming and all that other stuff. But I think the argument is from everybody is just, hey, I want to have consent I want to give consent for you to use my voice, my instrument, and my identity. And I also want to be compensated for it. I think that's the things that we're up against with technology, because, I don't know how y'all got introduced to it, but I heard like Axl Rose singing a Johnny Cash song. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy, man. But then I started thinking about like, who owns that? Who's getting paid on that? You start thinking about, wait a minute, that's somebody else's song. And when I went down to the day the governor was signing here in Nashville, he was down on Broadway, which is kind of our touristy little strip, and they were in this little honky tonk down there. Luke Bryan, this country guy, got up on stage and he said, man, I knew something was going on when somebody played me an AI song, and he said it was me singing, and I couldn't tell the difference. It sounded like Luke Bryan. And it was crazy,
It is crazy.
So, there's efforts behind the scenes with legislators and people within the music industry and stuff that, this isn't like a super surprise. This has been happening. It's been going on. The technology stuff has been happening. But it's just like from a protection mindset or whatever. We're just like, hey, man, somebody needs to police this thing,
Right.
So from that side of it, sorry, I didn't mean to get off on the tangent, but it's exciting to me, man. The music industry is changing all the time. It's fun. And the people growing up, are going to figure out ways to use all this technology to do something that, they're going to change the world. It's undeniable. Something awesome is going to happen.
Well, I got to say one thing. You have a great attitude. It's, you're experiencing all these changes, but yet you're rolling with the punches. You're trying to protect yourself at the same time, but you are, embracing it to a point. And I think your attitude about it is, I wish everybody's attitude was like that, because
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah,
there's a lot of questions, and I don't know. To me, I've been afforded a great opportunity to be able to do music and stuff, and to still be doing it now. I mean, we took kind of a big hiatus when our children were born. A lot of us, we're kind of a family first mindset. Even before we had kids, we were real close to our families and stuff. And we were kind of on hiatus where we would only do some one-offs, fly off and do a rock Loma or something like that.
yeah,
And um, but the music industry I've been in it my whole life, man, in one aspect or another. So when I was a kid in the Tora time and a little bit after that, I was the artist. When my children were born, I switched gears and I started working for the record labels for RCA and Sony and Provident, which is the Christian label group underneath Sony. And I'd work in artist development and marketing at those places, which I did a bunch of retrospect, of what was going on with our band. I was like, oh, I didn't know any of these strategic meetings were going on and marketing meetings. We just had a chord and itinerary, and we were walking around kissing everybody and partying and having a great time and going to the next town. So I learned a lot at that. And then I was in publishing for about 8 years, music publishing here in Nashville. And then I became a teacher. I taught at Belmont University, which is a Christian college here. I was an entertainment business professor. And then I taught at several other independent schools that taught. The last one I was at had 7 campuses across North America. And I was the entertainment business chair for them. So I think what happened was I had some great mentors when I was little. The guy that owned Ardent Studios, his name's John Fry. For any of your listeners or viewers, he started Ardent in his sewing room at his house in his garage, and it became this huge entity in Memphis. Man, everybody from the Stacks people that had worked there to when I walked out in the hallway when I was a little kid, I never knew who was going to be standing there. I walked out one time, it was freaking Greg Allman just standing there getting a cup of coffee, And I looked up again, it's Leonard Skinner standing there. And then it was REM, and then it was Stevie Ray Vaughan, and all these people were in the building.
yeah,
And I mean, there was hundreds of bands. Those were just little snippets of when I would show up and be there. If we weren't on the road, if we weren't traveling, we always went to Ardent and drove them crazy and hung around and tried to bother everybody. But John Fry was kind of a father figure to my band. He introduced us to the record industry. He told us, he said, "Hey, this is you," and he drew a circle around. And he said, "This is everybody's gonna be digging in your pocket because you're gonna have all these other people. It kind of takes a village to do the kind of stuff that y'all are fixing to do." And until he passed away about 10 years ago, every decision I ever made in my life from the time I was about 17 or 18, I always ran it by John. Whatever, if I was going to be at a label or publishing or teaching or singing or whatever it was, I would call him and go, "All right, I'm feeling a little nutty. I got something to run by you." And he would go, whatever fires were going on around him, he would say, "I got 10 minutes. Let's talk about it." So I miss him a lot.
I bet.
But look him up. He actually engineered a band called Big Star. I don't know if y'all remember them. He produced them. If you're not familiar with them or you're people watching and listening, y'all should look them up. His recordings are pristine. They still, stand the test of time. They're awesome. They were chasing George Martin and the Beatles, and they were doing this really cool pop music. You guys ever watched that '70s show?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that song that's their intro song to the show. That's a Big Star song.
Okay.
In the streets, and it's Cheap Trick singing their song, so it's the Cheap Trick version. But so that's how your audience would probably recognize them. But then if you go back in their catalog, there's three albums, 3 or 4 that you can go back and listen to. But anyway, John was kind of a pass it on person. He pushed you to try to figure out technology, try to figure out the industry, challenge yourself, try to grow. He had a lot of great attributes that he tried to pass. We were a bunch of crazy little, smoking, little rowdy little garage band.
Yeah.
And he was a great dude to kind of, get us settled down. And he was one. And then I had my first manager, Richard Sanders. He worked on our first record with us, and he ended up leaving his management company and go to work for Clive Davis, who started Arista Records, and he worked his way all the way up to the head of RCA in New York. And when I met my wife and I had children, all of a sudden I said, "Hey, I probably need to come off the road. I don't want to miss something with my family." And I called Richard and them. I had left high school in my senior year to do the Tora Tora thing, and so I decided to go back to college. And I was like 30 years old, and I needed 2 letters of recommendation to get into college. And John Fry gave me one, and my first manager, Richard Sanders, gave me one. And they both were kind of pass it on dudes. And I went back as an adult student to college, which was like a movie or something, y'all. I'm not kidding. I walked in, I looked around, everybody looked like they were 12 years old. And I just went, oh my God, I'm in the wrong freaking building. I'm not kidding, man. And I'll never forget it. There was this black lady, Yolanda Matthews. She came walking around the corner and she saw me panicking. I was like, man, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. And she goes, hey, what are you doing? And um, I said, I was coming in to check on working on a degree. And she goes, well, cool. She goes, come in my office for a minute. I want to talk to you. And she sat me down and she said, what's the end in mind? What do you want to do? And I said, I want to come in here and get my degrees as fast as I can and get out of here. And she said, okay, that's what we're going to do. She said, I'm going to sit down and write you a map. She said, we're going to line up your courses and everything right now. And so because I was an adult student, I had an opportunity to design my own degree based in the entertainment industry. And she goes, do you have anything that can show that you were in the music industry? And I said, man, what do you need? I got boxes of stuff. And I had everything from, our itineraries of touring. I heard our scripts for our videos and the videos that were on MTV. I had all of our recordings, sessions, all that stuff. And so anyway, she ended up telling me to put together a portfolio and come in and present it before a board, at the school. She just said, we're going to look at all your stuff and then we'll decide, maybe this will save you some courses and you're going for your master's degree or whatever. And she ended up helping me, man. And it was like one of the coolest things. I mean, I went in and put my head down and I did everything in like 3 years. I played little honky tonks at night and I'd go to school during the daytime. And in the meantime, we had 3 children. And then I decided I wanted to come to Nashville. This was about in 2000, early 2000s. And I moved here in 2005. So I've been here almost 20 years.
Well, it sounds like you had some great people around you.
Yeah, man, it was pretty amazing, and they were passing on people, and I think that's where I got it from. Is I don't have the answer for everybody. Those kids that came into school and their eyes were this big around, they're like, "We're going into the music business," and I was like, "Awesome," and I was like, "I don't have it all figured out, but I can probably tell you a bunch of stuff not to do." I can give you that heads up, and then give them some tools for anybody that's starting out in the industry. There's kind of like a little for any business that you just like, hey, this is kind of how you got to set yourself up to make sure that you're protected and everything. So I've been passionate about it my whole life, and I love it, and I care about our industry and what's happening. And I feel very indebted to the community that's let me participate in it. I mean, I think what's going on with me right now is I've rested, I feel good, and my voice feels okay. So I think that's what hit me. I just was talking to my wife, and I said, I think I just want to get out and go play some shows, see some of the fans. And what I'm doing now is when the band's not playing is I do kind of a storyteller's thing, kind of what I'm doing on this podcast with y'all, where I talk about all the people behind the scenes. They would see us in a concert and it's just the 4 of us and we come out there and blow your head off for an hour and a half and then we take off. But at these shows, I get to play a song. I get to talk about songwriters. I get to talk about John Fry and Ardent and the people that produced us, because they were super talented. I mean, we were just a little rock garage band, and we walked in. I remember hearing our stuff in the studio, and I just went, "Oh my God, that's us! That freaking sounds awesome!" How did y'all get it to sound like that? And I saw Paul Ebersole, who did Surprise Attack with us. I just saw him a few weeks ago up here in Nashville. I got to get together with him to say, "Hey, we're celebrating 35 years of this record, man. Can you believe that?" And he's still doing the exact same thing he was doing back then. He's still producing people. He said, I'm still sitting in a room writing songs, talking to them, recording their tracks and all that kind of stuff. And he looks great. And but there was a lot of people behind the scenes that helped us, do the thing. Everybody from the promotion staffs and all that stuff that people just really didn't recognize it back then. They just kind of saw you in a magazine or saw you on TV, and they're like, "Oh man, these guys are just doing it." But it was so many other people that were involved in all that stuff that made us look like $1,000,000, when we walked out. So
Yeah, like you said, it takes a village, right?
yeah, absolutely.
So, just out of curiosity, a couple of the question I had was like when you play live, is is there a certain song you close with every night? You know, like AC/DC does for those about to rock. That's their big ending song in every concert. Is there a closer that you guys go to all the time, or
Man, that's a good question. A lot of times we do Walkin Shoes at the end. That's kind of our big one that everybody kind of waits for.
that was kind of your
But
first hit, right? That was the first.
yeah,
Yep.
but we switch it around sometimes. We used to do City of Kings, which is a super heavy one. Um, yeah, we kind of alternated. It's really hard, depending on what the show is. If we're an opener, there's like a limited amount of time. We might have 30 minutes, 45 minutes or something.
Right. Right.
So that's really hard. And we played that Rock Timber up in Hinckley, Minnesota, and we had a really short set that day. I think we were one of the first bands on. And we were like, we really want to rock. We want to play something new, which is kind of the band. We're kind of wanting to do it because we're just like, we want to see what it feels like on stage in front of a big crowd. And but we were like, hey, we only have time for one acoustic song. We're not going to be able to just sit there and be doing singer songwriter all night. So between Phantom Rider and Nowhere to Go But Down. So Phantom Rider's on the first record, Nowhere to Go But Down's on Wild America. And I said, why don't I just make a call on stage? We'll just kind of get a read on the crowd, and just because we kind of do Nowhere to Go But Down's kind of got a little more kind of like mid-tempo kind of thing going on. And so anyway, we go out and we played, there's a handful of them we have to do the singles, like Walkin Shoes and Guilty, and Phantom Rider was one, and Amnesia and Faith Healer, Dead Man's Hand. But anyway, for some reason in this set, man, I'm up there having a great time, and I just turned around and grabbed my guitar, and I just started Nowhere to Go But Down, and I played it, and everything's great. We end the show and did Walkin Shoes or Love's a Bitch or something at the end. And I go off stage, and somebody wrote on my social media, they said, I've waited 32 years to come and see you live, and you didn't play Phantom Rider. And I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. I mean, it was just a fluke. I mean, I could have just played anything. I just picked it up and I just said, well, I think I'll do Nowhere. It's kind of feels a little more up tempo. And I felt horrible. I felt about that big. I was like, but there's always that aspect of it when you get off that somebody's going to say, why didn't you play so-and-so? And you just go, God, we just didn't have enough time, or it just didn't fit in the set the right way this time. Or
Right.
We do try to flip it around a little bit. This past year in Memphis, we did the whole first record, which we hadn't played that in 35 years, probably every song surprise tag. So that was kind of interesting. And when we announced it, we were looking at each other and we go, do they think we're going to do it in order, or are we going to do it how we want to do it? Because I made a crack to the band. I was like, hey, there's like 3 of them where I'm like in the highest part of my register, like back to back. It was like She's Good, She's Bad, One for the Road. And there was one before that. I can't remember what it was, but they're all like, my head's about to explode. I mean, it was that. And I asked them, I said, hey, you think y'all want to tune down or something?
Yeah.
Right.
In that part of the set. But they said, hey, instead of that, why don't we just surprise them? Let's walk out and let's open the set with Riverside Drive. We hadn't played that in 35 years, and we're just going to walk out and Keith's going to hit that chord opening. Dun, 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 dun. And I mean, everybody's face. I knew everybody in that room. I grew up with them. I played football with that group of people. I halfway probably almost went to jail with that guy. I stayed out too long with this person. I mean, I was looking out there and their faces went, and I mean, we were like, yeah, man, we got them. Right off the bat, it was just, they totally surprised them. And that was fun, And so, yeah, the sets, we kind of switch it around. There's some main ones that stay. The Walkin Shoes and Guilty's in there all the time. Phantom Rider's normally, if it's our set, we're doing that one for sure. And Amnesia. Faith Healer, I think we've done that a handful of times. maybe in the past few years. So every once in a while we'll throw a curveball in there and just say, hey, let's just try one to see how it feels in the set.
I love that song. Matter of fact, we did a episode with ballads that should have been huge.
Oh, wow.
And Faith Healer was one of my picks.
Oh, thanks, man.
I absolutely love that song, and I also love Nowhere to Go But Down too. That you made a good choice playing that song. I feel bad for the guy who didn't get to hear Phantom Rider.
Yeah, man, me too. Well, you know, Amnesia and Faith Healer, we wrote with a guy named Taylor Rhodes. He and I talked about this in my acoustic set. He had written some songs with Kicks and produced some songs for them. And A&M got us to come here. He was living in Nashville for Wild America, and we came up, and he taught us so much about writing. He had written Crying with Aerosmith right before we came up here, and I think that was the same trip. I'm sorry, I might be getting mixed up. But anyway, we liked him because he had done stuff with Kicks, and we had done shows with them, and we're huge fans of theirs. But he was just a super down-to-earth guy, and he helped us write Amnesia. And then we were kind of messing around, and Faith Healer ended up popping out, and we were like, "Wow, okay." We weren't even expecting to get this one, but we got one. And I remember we demoed the song at his house. He had like a little studio set up, and we left with the version of Amnesia and Faith Healer on that trip. It was pretty awesome. And I still see him up here every once in a while. I bump into him. He's still right. He went on to write all kinds of songs for all different genres. I think he had a Celine Dion.
Really?
Yes, she recorded one of his songs or something. I mean, it was crazy. He's really talented. And then Nowhere to Go But Down, we wrote with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers drummer, a guy named Stan Lynch.
Cool.
And he was just the coolest cat. We went and met him out in LA with our record company people, just sent us in a rent-a-car to his house. And he opened the door, and we felt like we had known him our whole life. It was one of those, I don't know if you've ever met somebody like that, but it was just like from the second I talked to him, I was like, wow, this is crazy. He goes, what kind of stuff y'all listening to? And we said, Jimi Hendrix. And he goes, cool, man, let's put one of those records on and let's sit down on the floor and talk for a minute. And he just asked us all about our project and what we've been working on, and, you know, just made us really feel comfortable. But he was killer. He had a studio set up too at his house. And, you know, we did a bunch of songs with him. We wrote Dead Man's Hand and Nowhere to Go But Down, and Never Too Late for Love, which is an outtake that's floating around out there somewhere. But I don't know. We probably wrote maybe 8 or 10 songs with him through a few album cycles. You know, we worked with him once in California, and then he had a place down in St. Augustine. Then we went and stayed with him down there and wrote for the third record. And there's a song called Time in the Tide, and he had one called Rescue Me. I play that one, both of those, all the time when I do my acoustic sets. I love them.
So, like in our talk about Faith Healer, I thought it should have been just a huge, massive hit. Do you have some songs that you remember from that you played or that are on some of your albums that you thought maybe could have been big hits that you don't get to play as much? Or
yeah, I mean, Nowhere to Go But Down was, we really wanted that to be a single for us.
Yeah.
They ended up doing Faith Healer and Dead Man's Hand, and then by that time we were back making a new record. But we liked that one a lot. On that third record, there was a song, Revolution Day, that session of stuff that was called Shelter from the Rain. I really loved that one. I don't get to play that one a lot. I was trying to think. I don't know, man. It's hard. You love them all, and we probably wrote 60 or 70 songs for each one of those projects. You know, they're all your babies, and you start out with kind of a big group of them, and then you whittle it down to about 20, and then you go, all right, we got to get serious now. We're gonna cut 14 of all these demos, and then you say, well, it's probably only 10 going to go on the record, so. Right. We're going to start whittling, and you know, each one of them is like your little baby. You're like, oh my God, we can't cut that one. We worked on this forever and rewritten it and changed the, arrangements and the words, and this one's awesome. And but there was a lot of input back then, from record label people, from your management companies, the studio you're working at. Everybody had their idea of what they think is the next thing. So I think we just tried to stay true to ourselves. Y'all were talking about, our labeling ourselves, and our genre and all that kind of stuff is I think we always kind of stayed in the same lane. There was a lot of people say there was a big difference between that first record and that second record, and it was because we got a lot of experience, man. Between those two projects, we played, I mean, our brains out. We got to where we were just on the autopilot, and everybody grew on their instruments. Like John really got locked in on drums. Him and Patrick playing together, bass and drums, really got locked in. And Keith's playing was just insane, man. He just was playing all the time and writing on the road. And my voice, I started really getting to experiment with that. I learned quickly on that first album that I had sang every song at the very top of my voice. And when you're in the studio, you're comfortable and everything's cool and you don't have to think about it. But when you start doing that, like 11 or 12 shows in a row or whatever, 15 of them in a row or something, you're like, man, dude, those high notes are starting to wear my voice out, So I think I started getting a little more selective on that second record. And plus our experience just in general. I mean, we had never traveled when we were signed. We had never toured or anything. We got signed right out of Memphis. And so we hadn't seen a lot. Uh, our well we were dipping in was pretty straight ahead, about girls and having a good time and all that. But when we got on the road, we were like, man, there's a whole big old world out here that we told A&M, we said, we do not want to go back home. We just want to stay on the road. We'll do whatever you want us to,
Yeah.
And so I think that changed our perspective. And, not meaning this in like a cocky way or anything, but I think we just got more confident. But on that second record, we said, hey, man, I'm starting to understand my personal instrument and then how to do it with you guys. And our vision about our writing and all that changed. Like, I felt like we grew up on that second record. And just our life experiences that were going on in the background, all the just regular normal life things that are happening those were kind of our college years,
Yeah.
all this stuff going on. And there's a lot of drama and crazy crap. And we tried to stay grounded and all that. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's hard when you think about it. Walkin Shoes definitely was a trip because it was a really late song in the process. We had written probably, I don't know, 60 songs for that first record, and we were getting ready to call it and just say, hey, here's our stack of songs that we're going with. And I was at Keith's apartment one day, and he started doing the little riff, that starts the song, and I just said, what is that? And he goes, well, it's just something I'm working on. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. We got to, he was excited about it too. I mean, he was waiting to show me when I got there, but he was just fiddling around. And that song, we wrote it pretty quickly, and we panicked because we were like, I think we're too late. We're not going to make it on this project. So we went in and cut a demo really quickly, and A&M ended up liking it. And they said, yeah, let's put it on the record. This is cool. This is different than all the other stuff that's on here. And then we didn't even know it was going to be the single until later. After the process, we'd recorded it and all that. And they said, man, we like Walkin Shoes. Let's do that. And I think it gave us kind of an identity.
It did.
Out of a lot of people that were out at that time. We all got clumped in. There was all kind of different genres of music going on and new people coming on the scene and all that stuff. And a lot of people ask us that. They said, do you wish that you went to LA and recorded with some big producer out there and all that? And I was kind of glad that we stayed in Memphis. Like, I think it would have changed our sound and stuff if we'd have went. Just the influences that we would have had out there would have been different. But when we stayed there, we kind of stayed ourselves. And I think through that whole process of those, the A&M years anyway, we stayed based out of Ardent. We did every recording we did was out of there. And that was kind of our, home turf. And, I think it stayed true to our Memphis sound. We're just kind of a little gritty 4-piece band. We had a ton of production on us that made us sound so slick. But when you just hear us live, it's just the four of us kind of going off,
Yeah. It's funny you said, you made the comment that we grew up, and in doing this podcast, we've run into that a lot. Like you were mentioning you were a Tesla fan, and the first album is such just kind of a straight ahead rock and roll album, and then you go on to Great Radio Controversy, and it's like they grew up. Like the music, the writing was a lot better. The music was better. It just, you could tell they grew up. And I think that same is true with you guys. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Surprise Attack, but when you get to Wild America, it's just, yeah, it's like you grew up, the songwriting was better, the guitar work was better, the whole band sounded tighter. You can definitely hear that.
I love that album so much, and I'm surprised it didn't sell double of what Surprise Attack did.
Yeah, it was a weird time. That's when the industry was shifting, and I think it did about maybe half or three quarters of what the first record did, and maybe half, really, if I can say it the right way. I think that's probably about what it was. So we were feeling it. I mean, we worked almost 2 years on that record while we were touring. We did it on the back half of Surprise Attack, and then we were home for about a year recording and just doing fly dates and stuff like that. And so it's a lot of work. And we were, a lot of people have said the sophomore jinx and stuff like that, but we didn't feel like that. I think it was just just a shift in the industry. People,
Yeah.
No doubt.
a whole new crew of people had come in and were, that music was incredible, man. The Soundgarden people, we shared the label with them, and we saw them play and we just went, oh my God, this guy's voice, what the hell? Alice in Chains was the same way. That guy, Lane, could sing, man. His room, he would fill a whole room.
Yeah, for sure.
Just singing with his, off the mic. And so that was a little bit tough. And then by the time we got to the third album for A&M, things had shifted a lot. We were kind of feeling it was a little bit darker. And we were like, the guy from the company was leaving and our lives were changing. It was a little bit, I don't know, not pressure, but I think just pressure on ourselves. We were thinking, man, we just did something really cool with Wild America, and it's just kind of just sitting there flopping around. What's going on, And but that happened to a lot of people. So I mean, I'm not meaning that for y'all to feel bad for us or something. It was just the state of the industry at the time. So
right.
But man, just from an overview of all this, is we're kind of talking tonight. I mean, I think everything worked the way it did. It hurt at the time when the record deal went away and all that kind of stuff. It was pretty devastating because we were really busy for about 6 years, and then all of a sudden it was just like the ride stopped, and it was just like hitting a light switch. That's how quick it was, and we just went, "Whoa, what's going on?" And in retrospect, there was a lot of things going on with us personally. Keith was married and had a son on the way, and I think all that stuff kind of happened how it was supposed to, even though it kind of was hurt at the time. And like I said, we never had any kind of big blowout. So we ended up, we just said, we'll get together when everybody feels like getting together. I thought it would be, a couple of months, and it ended up being a few years before we ever played again.
Yep.
And one of our crew guys had a really serious health issue that he ended up making a full recovery, but he had really bad medical debts. And so we got together to do a benefit for him. That's how we got back together talking. And we played a little tiny bar in Memphis. And then, it was probably, I don't know, maybe a few more years before we went out and did Rocklahoma and all that kind of stuff. So about 2008 is when we were celebrating like the 20th anniversary of the band or something. Yeah. And we did the Rocklahoma thing. And that kind of started our little one-offs, and led us up into the Monsters of Rock cruises and the Frontiers Records, release and all that kind of stuff.
Actually going to ask about the Monsters of Rock cruise. I saw that you did one of those.
Yeah, we're kind of in a rotation with those guys. It's amazing. Any of your viewers or people listening, if you've never done it, it's awesome. It's about 3,000 drunk people on a boat, and it's about 30 bands, and it's 5 days long. And the people that put it together, it's incredible. Y'all wouldn't believe the way the crew people work, and it just goes off without a hitch. They're amazing. They're so great at their jobs.
So you might be doing it again.
Oh yeah, we'll do them again. We've done probably 3 or 4 of them. We started 2017, we did 2019, and then COVID hit, so we got thrown off. We did 2023. We just did the Mountain Music Festival, which is the same group of people, and so maybe 25, 26.
How about
more likely 26? I think they've already listed all their 25 bands that are out, but it's a great experience, and you get to see the bands up close and personal. You do activities with them. I mean, you're just kind of on the boat together. So, a few of them hang out in their rooms and don't really interact, but mostly, for the most part, that's the whole reason you're on there, is just to see all the fans and talk to everybody. And
That's
it's
awesome.
really crazy. And we love it because we get to see everybody. They're all touring like we are, so we don't really get to see each other that much. So people like Dangerous Toys, we've known them. We toured together. Our records came out within a week or so of each other in '89. Like theirs came out early in May, and ours came out kind of the middle of May. And then we toured with LA Guns, later in the year, and met each other. And I still talk to Jason all the time. His voice is still incredible. And they kind of had a Southern thing going too. They were Texas and we were Tennessee, so we kind of clicked right off the bat. And that's one of my favorite tours that we ever did. That was amazing. We were playing little 2,000 seat venues, and it was just packed out every night, and the shows were fun. Everybody got along. But anyway, the Monsters Rock thing, that's a great way to see all those bands. You get everybody, Tesla and Extreme and Queensryche, and Kix was on there when they were still playing, and everybody, man. It's all these rando people that you just go, I can't believe all these people are on here together. Excuse me.
Yeah, we mentioned Rock Timber a couple times. Are you think you'll be doing that? I'm supposed to be going to this.
That was a bucket list kind of date for us. We would love to come back there, and we did M3 this over in Maryland. That was one that we've always wanted to do. So, we're always open. We just try to do it where it makes sense for us all to get together and do it. And we still love playing. Everybody's healthy right now. We feel good. So, if any of your viewers or people listening want to get in touch with us, they can find us at toratoramusic.com. You can write us at toratorarocks@gmail.com if you want to talk to us. But we're on all the social media. That's us running it.
Yep.
So if you guys ever have questions or you want to talk to us or you want some merchandise or anything like that, you can go to Right Rock Sportswear. That's where the Tora merch hangs out these days. And we love Joe Wright and his whole family. They run it. They've been great to us. So if we can ever help, or if we can come see you in concert, write us. I'm pretty wide open on the acoustic trail, man. I might have to come up through the Dakotas and figure out how to get there.
That would be awesome. There's a bar in town here called The Original. They have a lot of. They've had. I just saw Faster Pussycat there. I've seen.
Oh yeah, I love those guys.
So they have a lot of, and I kind of know the owner, so maybe I'll put a bug in his ear to get a hold of you. But
yeah, man, tell him to get in touch with me. We'll do something. I need to come up there. Maybe I can make a trip through Brookings while I'm up that way.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
So, oh man, it would be really great because it's probably what do you say, 500 people probably max in there.
Yeah. Wow.
They have a nice.
We have to get the word out, man.
Yeah, we'd love to, and man, I tell you what, you've been more than gracious and very open. And I mean, we didn't have to ask you any questions because you answered pretty much all of them. It was awesome. I was going to ask you, did you guys start off? Were you kind of a cover band to start off, and then?
Man, we did covers just for like 2 seconds, and it was those songs that I told you before.
Isn't that
Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith, and I Want You to Want Me, Cheap Trick, Hot Blooded, 2112, and Rock and Roll Fantasy by Bad Company. We had a couple of those. Can't Get Enough of Your Love, and
so you guys jumped right into it.
We kind of butchered them. Just to be totally honest with y'all, I think we were looking around at each other. We're going, man, these don't sound exactly right. And we said, well, why don't we write our own stuff? And then nobody will know if we're messing up or not. So we kind of just jumped into doing originals. And
well,
there's a plus and a minus to that. In some ways, doing the other people's stuff teaches you a lot about arrangements and writing and all. We kind of did it our own way, and so that was probably a little bit of harder avenue to go down, but it was just a lot of fun. I mean, we try to do cover. I think we played one show and we went in and only had like 10 songs. And we played the set and then went outside and started high-fiving each other and hugging each other and smoking a cigarette. And that was great. And the sound guy walked by and went, cool, man, I'll see you in 10 minutes. And we were like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, man, you got 3 sets tonight, man. That's just the first one.
Had to play the same 10 songs.
Oh my God, yeah. And they fired, you know, when we got done, they were like, you're never playing this place again. My God, you played the same freaking 10, you know. We didn't know. I was probably 16 or something. I mean, we thought it was cool that we landed the gig. And, but, you know, we revisit a cover every now and then. We used to like to do, I Got the Fire, and it was the Montrose song, but we did the Iron Maiden cover of it.
Yeah.
It was really cool. We used to end our shows with that for a long time. We liked that one. We did some Zeppelin, that rock and roll. We would do that every once in a while. It's like an encore thing.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. We've done a bunch of crazy stuff. We did Rod Stewart, I'm Losing You. You remember that song? We did that one.
I don't remember it, but Chris probably does.
We'll come up with something just out of left field every once in a while and throw in a cover. You know, just something that we're all digging.
Yeah.
Do you have any covers that are on like compilation albums or anything? Like when you said Rod Stewart, there was this compilation album called Forever Mod.
No, I don't think it made it on there. I think we just did them live.
Okay.
I can't remember any. I mean, there's possibly we did some really crazy partying a long time ago. There might be some studio, but I'm not sure. I'll have to ask the band. That's actually a good question. I don't know if we have a recorded cover version that's presentable. Anyway.
Okay.
So you got anything new or things? And we know.
Oh yeah, really quick before we get off, I wanted to let y'all know we do have. It's only limited. I know this sounds like a sales pitch, but it's true. We only made a small version of for the 35th anniversary. A thing called the Best of the Rest. It's a project, a collection. It's 4 singles that we've let out over the past few years. That is Trip the Light Fantastic, Little Girl Blue, Go Where the Love Is, and Neptune Society. And Neptune Society is a song. I played keyboards on it. I've never played piano on a recording before that went out on a project. I just did demos and stuff. And so I'm really proud of that. I worked on some music with my son during COVID, and he's a really killer piano player. I was telling y'all earlier. And we did a song called Godspeed and Goodnight that we wrote together. And then this other song, Neptune Society, kind of just developed out of this other idea. And so I did the piano and stuff, and then Keith put all the guitars on it. And man, it's one of my favorite things that we've done. But anyway, the project is called Best of the Rest. You can get it at rightrocksportswear.com. Tora Tora, just look up Right Rock Sportswear. We're on there with, I think, Tom Kiefer and a bunch of other bands have their merch through there. So you can just find us under there. And if you ever have any questions, y'all just look us up on social media and shoot us a note. We're on there all the time talking, and happy to let you know where to get your stuff. And hopefully I'll see you guys out on the road.
Yeah, definitely.
That would
at
be
some point.
That's it. Is there anything that we didn't ask that we should have asked, do you think? Well, we didn't really ask much. We just kind of listened. And it was awesome because, I'm like going down the list. I'm like, yep, you answered it. Yep, you answered that. Yep, you got that one. So it was really cool. I am going to send you a link to, we have a little merch store that I want to get you something off there if you want to pick something out, and just send me like I don't know where you get your fan mail to, and I can send out a shirt or a mug or
what. That's really nice. Yeah, thank you. I'll be happy to wear it. And I do some things lives on my social media, so man, I'll wear it on there and promote you guys.
Hey, that would be awesome. But after we're done here, I'll just email you a link to the store, and you just pick something out, tell me what you want, and I'll get it and I'll send it to whatever address you want me to send it to.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you both of y'all for letting me get on here and rattle my jaw for a minute.
Yeah,
it was our pleasure. Like it
was absolutely our pleasure. Thank you from the bottom of our heart. It was great.
Awesome. Well, listen, when I get ready to promote something else, I'm gonna reach out to you and we'll do this again.
I was just going to say that, you're always welcome here. If you ever want to come back on because you got something to promote, please do. We would be happy to have you back.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much, man. I wish you a lot of luck with your podcast. Thank you for having me.
It's a labor of love.
It is a labor of love, and I will talk to that bar owner and see if we can't work something out. So
yeah, man, I'd love to get up that way. That sounds fun.
All right. Thank you so much, Anthony. You've been great.
Thanks, man. It was great meeting y'all. I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for talking to me. I love the band and I love talking about it. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, it's a great band, and you guys do stuff and do great stuff. And I was going to say, I just started listening to the Revolution Day album.
Revelation Day.
Revelation Day. Is that what I said? Revelation.
Mhm. Revolution Day. Mhm.
Yeah. I just started listening to that. I didn't even know that existed. So,
Oh man. Okay. Well, we'll have to get back together, and you'll have to let me know what you think.
man, I love it. I do. I mean, like I go through, and if I like the song, I hit it to a favorite, and it goes into a favorite playlist. And I think there's about 7 or 8 that I favorited off of there. So,
all right.
pretty
Cool.
good.
Thank you, man.
Yeah,
That's killer.
and yeah, I'm listening to Beale Street too, and I got quite a few off of that too. So
Yeah, man. We loved that one. That was fun.
Yeah.
We cut that at Sam Phillips
Oh,
recording place.
Zebedee, what is that?
So I thought it was the Sons of Thunder. I kind of got it out of the Bible. It's like a saying in the Bible, but that song was about when we were talking earlier about just being inclusive and welcoming everybody and all that. We just thought it was a cool story. I worked or sat in with some guys up here in Nashville that they kind of created a thing called the Rock and Roll Residency, where it was all these guest people would sit in. They could do the show by themselves, but they let everybody sit in.
Cool.
And every time they played, you never knew who was going to show up. I mean, I'm not kidding. Robin Zander sang at it. Alice Cooper's whole band showed up one night, except the whole band got up and played.
Wow.
It was all the Hailstorm. All these people are all jamming, and every person that got up and sang and played. But it was just always this welcoming atmosphere. It was all musicians and no egos. Everybody was just in there having a great time and listening and just freaking out on. They were doing really deep dives, like "Fool for the City," Foghat, and then they'd do 2 Minutes to Midnight by Iron Maiden, and just whatever. It's just freaking you out the whole time. And that kind of inspired me. And we were thinking about when we started out with the Tora parties and stuff about just having everybody there having a good time, and that's where that song came from. And we were like, man, this would be a cool one to open the record. Just welcome everybody in, and
yep, it is cool.
It was a lot of fun. And that whole process of recording at Sam Phillips. I mean, I don't know if you know it or your people watching know about it, but Sam Phillips, had Sun Studios that found Roy Orbison and Jerry Lee Lewis and Johnny Cash and a guy named Elvis and Howlin' Wolf. And I mean, he started rock and roll, man, out of Sun. And he sold Sun to RCA once he was up and successful. And he went down on the same street in Memphis and he bought an auto repair shop and he gutted it and he built his dream studio. And I mean, he spent a ton of money back in the day on it. He designed the echo chamber that was in there. He designed all the studios how he wanted it. And so when we went in there, there's a friend of ours named Jeff Powell that worked on Wild America. He was an assistant engineer. He now works in the Sam Phillips studio. He cuts to vinyl. He has a lay machine that cuts the vinyl that they go and press, at the pressing plant. And so we got ready to cut a record for Frontiers back in 2018. And we went with Jeff. We said, hey, we want to cut. He asked us if we wanted to cut a couple of singles. And we said, man, we want to cut a whole project with you. We want to come in. And we said, look, we're not 25 years old anymore. We're going to sound different than 1992 or whenever it was we worked together. And he said, don't worry, man, I'll make it sound good. Just come in here and just do what you do. And I swear, y'all, we walked in the building and I thought Sam Phillips was going to walk in. I mean, it looks exactly the same. Checkerboard floor, seafoam green walls, mirrors in the bathroom, real freaky looking stuff going on. And the rooms, the recording rooms, it's where Bob Dylan recorded. Robert Plant recording there, all the Stax people, the rock and roll, history in Memphis, they were all hanging out in there. And the craziest part of the whole thing was we did the whole project in like 8 days, I think. I was going down there from Nashville, so I was shooting out on weekends to sing. And when I got ready to sing my vocals, we had to turn the record in August for it to come out in February on the Monsters of Rock cruise. We were going to let the album out on there in 2019. And so I get a call from Jeff and he said, hey man, William Bell wants to have the room. And for everybody listening, William Bell is this really famous soul singer from Stax Records. I listen to his Christmas songs and stuff at Christmas. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's going to be in the studio. Yeah, of course he can have it. And they said, well, that means you can't use the room. And I was like, well, they go, we're going to send your songs to Nashville and you can sing up there. And I was like, nope, this is a Memphis record. I'm not singing in Nashville. I'm not going to sing at my house. I'm coming to Memphis. We'll figure something out. So the thing about Sam Phillips Studio is the downstairs are the studios. It's got red shag carpet that starts up the stairs. It's about that thick. You go up the stairs, the second room is a big old empty room, and it used to be where the offices were in the distribution center where they put all the records and stuff. And you look on the hallway, and there's all these plaques publishing Walk the Line, Johnny Cash. I mean, it's all these historical things, and you're just freaking out. You know, well, when you turn around to go to the third floor, it's Sam's office and a couple of general manager office, and there's a bar. It's decorated like the 50s. It's still stock. You can go in there and get you a shot of something and everything. So when I went to Memphis to sing, I walk in the door and I can hear a B3 organ playing and somebody strumming acoustic, and I'm just getting chills all over my body. I'm like, man, William Bell's in there. This is awesome. This is crazy. And they look at me and they go, Anthony, you need to come upstairs. We got to talk to you. And I was going, I just drove from Nashville to Memphis 3 hours. They're going to tell me I'm not singing today, you know. And I start up the stairs, and when I turn the corner to go up, Sam Phillips' office is sitting there. And in any of the tours and stuff, you can't go up there. You can't take pictures. His door is never open or anything. I looked up there. The doors were wide open, and my microphone was sitting in his office.
Oh, no shit.
I sang the whole Bastards of Bill record in his office for 2 days. I did 5 songs one day, and I did 6 the next day.
Wow.
And I'm looking, man. His desk is sitting there. It looks like the first iPod. It's got freaking a jukebox built in his desk where he would call and go, hey, I got the new Carl Perkins, man. Here it is. Listen, you want to hear it? Yeah. When did you put it on? I mean, he's got that all set up. There's 2 chairs sitting there, white leather, and 2 of those little skinny 70s ashtrays next to him. And I look above it, and Sam and Elvis are in a picture sitting in those chairs with girls in their lap and a cigar. And I'm like, oh my God, this is where they were partying.
Wow.
And my microphone's sitting here. And then there was a TV, one of those old console televisions, man, from like the 50s sitting behind me. And it had a drawer in it, and it pulled out, and it had a 45 of Roy Orbison sitting on it. And in between every take, I'd sing, and I'd turn around and look and go, oh my God, man, they were in here jamming out, smoking cigars, and had people in here partying. And I'm singing my record. It was so inspiring. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, and so that record's really raw. We cut the music and stuff. We cut down in the main room together. And then I came back and sang some of the vocals, you know, just to fix vocal parts and stuff. So anyway, if you hadn't checked it out, the Bastards of Bill record, that came out on Frontiers in 2019. And also there's an unplugged acoustic record that's out if you want to check that out.
Yep.
And but anyway, I didn't mean to keep going. You guys get in touch with us at toratoramusic.com, or you can write us at toratoraRocks@gmail.com, and write us on social media. And I'll see you out on the road sometime.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you.
I hope you guys have a good rest of your night, man. I enjoyed talking to you. Y'all take care.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed our content. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends. We greatly appreciate it. Links to everything we discussed will be included in episode notes. Feel free to check those out as well. Until next time, stay golden, Pony Boy, and rock on.